Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of Maintain Your Islamic Identity and Still Be a Boss Muslimapreneur. I'm your host, Halima de Oliveira of BUNHD. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Nadine George Harrington, licensed clinical social worker. And I just want to tell you guys that women often appear to suffer from the misconception that to be successful in business or accepted in society, they have to diminish or denounce their faith or beliefs. As a business coach, I have encountered women cross-culturally who face internal conflict regarding their religious identity, maintaining their family roles, and being their most authentic selves. I developed this podcast to help guide them back to reclaiming their faith, better define their Islamic roles so they can own their identity, live their absolute best life, and be a powerhouse in business. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nadine. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. How are you, my dear?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast, FYI. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's absolutely a pleasure. So, some people don't know I don't even know how we met, but it doesn't matter, right?
Well, actually, I do know how we met.
Remind me.
Yeah, we were at Sister Aisha. I want to say Aisha. She has a group that I attended where she's trying to get other women, Muslims, together that are entrepreneurs and in business. And I want to say it was a Sunday, and in the process of that event, she asked for us to get into groups and to do an activity. And through that process, I guess we began to introduce ourselves and what we did for a living. And we, after that exercise, kind of realized, I guess, that we had like minds in some respect and had interest in the same thing. So you actually came and introduced yourself to me, and that's how we began to speak. So alhamdulillah, that was good.
Alhamdulillah. You see, you never know how things are going to play out. But I do remember that. That was good. It was a whole bunch of sisters in the room. I remember that now. Listen, yeah. I'm about to be 40 this year. I'm not trying to say anything, but that 40, boy, the mind slips. I tripped up the sidewalk. I'm telling you, I tripped up the sidewalk like it was either last week or 2 weeks ago. I was like, oh no, and fell on my right knee. I was like, we can't do too much more of this. This body is not going to be able to take too much more of this. I'm sorry. But anyway, please, Nadine, please introduce yourself so that they get to know you and your business a little bit better.
Okay. My name is Nadine George Harrington. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm the owner, operator, and psychotherapist at Alpha Child and Family Services, which is located in Cinnaminson, New Jersey. I've been working in the mental health field, I would say, for the last 17 years, and I have significant experience in working with children, family, and youth. I'm a graduate of Temple University and also was trained in behavior analysis at St. Joseph's University.
Very nice. Very nice. So this program is aimed at helping women to become the best that they can be. So boss Muslimapreneur and still own their Islamic identity. So my goal is to have women on that are just bosses in their fields. So we've already proven that 17 years and counting, like how much of a boss do you need to be 17 years and counting? And I just want to commend you for what you do. So as a Muslim woman, it is often seen as taboo or as unnecessary to, kind of go to a therapist or to seek therapy. So, a lot of times what we get is, and just not even Muslim women, just people who are religious faith, period. The answer is go pray. So, or that's the devil. So as a therapist, what is your response to that?
Well, before I get into that very specific answer, I want to give you just a little background and let you know what my experience has been in working with the Muslim population and mental health. In my outpatient practice, if I had to actually count the number of Muslims that I've seen, I could probably literally do it on one hand. The vast majority of my clientele are actually non-Muslim. And I think that that is in part because of some misconceptions like the ones that you mentioned. It's really kind of tough to have some people, especially within the Muslim community, understand that there are some things that are not just about faith that require treatment of sorts. And, you know, a few years ago, there's a sister in Philadelphia, Sister Kalima, who runs the Muslim Wellness Foundation. She had a training for lay people to help other people in mental health. And I never forget a conversation that she had with someone who actually brought up this very same question. And I just waited with bated breath to hear what the response was going to be. And, you know, the person that presented it said that, you know, they felt like it could either be jinn or possession. And if they would just pray, or if their faith were more intense, that they wouldn't have these mental health issues. And the response from Sister Kalima was that that's not accurate. You know, that it's not just about faith for people, that it's not just about them not being religious enough. You know, the reality is that there are many factors that contribute to, you know, the development of mental health issues. And so to kind of just simplify it and say that, you know, if you just pray more, or, you know, you weren't possessed by jinn, that everything would be okay, is not an accurate description of what they may be experiencing. So, yeah, that is something that you will hear often. You know, the second, I guess, part to that question is that that's not something that you really can present to every Muslim, because where you are in terms of your faith varies. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Muslim that is, you know, very devout and is making their, you know, 5 daily prayers and their, you know, optional prayers as well, you know, saying to them pray more might be their solution. But if you have someone that's struggling in their faith, you know, having, you know, telling them to go pray, you know, may make them feel even more distant or more, I guess, dejected in a way, or even make them feel more isolated, because you're telling them to do something as a remedy which they're already struggling with. And so I think for those reasons, a lot of times, you know, Muslims, you won't necessarily see them in treatment, because there's a perception that if you have problems, if you have issues, you know, that they are because of your own doing, which is part of what, you know, the teachings are. But Islam, you know, I've learned in my experience, because I still consider myself a new Shahada 6 years later, you know, it's all about context. It's about context, you know. And so when you know, listen to people quoting surahs and, you know, pulling things from the Quran, they're using these very isolated, I guess, pieces to justify or to explain why you should or shouldn't do something, but they're not looking at it in the context from which it was presented.
Nadine, you put it on them real quick. I'm just going to say that you know, so I will tell you that I'm probably one of those people that prescribe to that, you know, just ideology that, you know, if I prayed more, if I sought Allah more, if I did this. And when I experienced my own, you know, depression and my own anxiety and stress while I was going through it, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I was in this place where I need to get centered. How do I get centered? You know, I started a yoga practice, and then, you know, of course, you know, prayer became as a result of it. But for me to even get to the prayer piece of it, I had to get centered first. You know, it was like, you know, okay, open the Quran. I couldn't even see the words of the Quran. You know, like I was that, you know, I was experiencing that much stress and anxiety that I would open the book, and despite a person that, you know, could read the Quran, you know, in Arabic, this is not just in English, read the Quran in Arabic, the words were a blur. And this is not exaggerated. This is real. And so I can totally totally relate to what you just said. And I'm sure there are people that will be listening into this and they'll be able to relate as well. And it's also the reason why I wanted to have Self-Care September, because you can't be a boss Muslima. You can't be this boss woman in business and this amazing woman without taking care of yourself. And part of that is taking care of your mental health as well. So I so appreciate that answer, and I so appreciate you, just going into that. One of the things that people don't realize is that there's no preparation for this call or for this, this podcast. We get on here, I'd ask the questions and then you answer them. So no one could have paid you to give that answer, but mashallah, that was the answer. So,
mashallah.
You touched on it a little bit earlier, and I would just ask you to just elaborate a little bit more. And maybe we don't touch on just Muslims, maybe we just touch on women in general. So how often do you encounter women or Muslimas specifically who are burnt out?
I think that I probably encounter them a lot, but they don't acknowledge that that's what's happening to them. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of instances where I may not see a sister for a while. And, she doesn't have that same smile or that same spark that I'm accustomed to seeing. And then if you inquire about how she's doing, you will hear things like that. Allah's the best of planners. It's going to be all right, sister, and all of those, kind of quintessential things that we will say when we may be facing trials. And I know that, Islam, doesn't necessarily advocate for people to outwardly complain about, what it is that they're going through, any challenges that they may have, because we're supposed to understand them as a test. But what I think happens sometimes is that people don't necessarily identify at the point in which it's not just about it being, quote unquote, a test, and it really being, okay, I'm struggling here to a point and now I need assistance. So I think that there probably are tons of people that are struggling that I actually encounter. But as far as them being identified, I think that happens probably a whole lot less. I can even say, for people that are close to me, that I, can talk to them on the phone, and these are practicing Muslims and people, that I care about deeply, and can hear in their voice that something's going on, but they will, not reach out for a variety of reasons, because they know that they're supposed to have the faith. They're supposed to, make the prayers. But I think that, by them being, having the understanding that you're not supposed to really kind of talk about issues, keeps a lot of people silent when there are a lot of people struggling.
That's a great point that you make there. And I'm glad that we're having this, this conversation about it, because, in this time right now, we're, as Muslims and women, we go through a lot on a daily basis. And so, that what people don't realize is that, seeking Allah's guidance and seeking his help through patience and prayer, right? He could be sending you a therapist to help you.
Yes. Yes.
I know that may sound like, oh, Halima, you're trying to stretch it, but he could be sending you a person to help you, and you may be denying that person the access to you because you're like, oh, I just got to pray more. But it could be that person that's walking down the street that smiles at you, that could totally change your perspective. It could be that person that, gives you like a quote from the Quran and it changes your perspective. They could just give you a hug and change your whole, change your whole perspective. So, I like that what you're saying is that, like, it's not just about just, the Quran and just, seeking it in the Quran. But I am going to quote, from it's from Sahih Bukhari, and it's Ibn Masud reported the messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, O Allah, I am your servant, the son of your servant, the son of your maidservant. My forelock is in your hand. Your command concerning me prevails, and your decision concerning me is just. I call upon you by every one of the beautiful names with which you have described yourself, or which you have revealed in your book, or you have taught to any of your creatures, or which you have chosen to keep in the knowledge of the unseen with you, to make the Quran the delight of my heart, the light of my chest, and to remove my sadness and dispel my anxiety. And that particular, excerpt from Sahih Bukhari and just that story, when I read it, that helped me to say, okay, you need help. And that helped me actually go and seek out a therapist, 3 years ago. And it was the best decision that I made. It actually made me stronger in my faith. But you talked a little bit earlier about how we go into this place where, we feel shame. I'm not ashamed about therapy. As a matter of fact, in my coaching business, when I experience, and this is also how we, work together as well, is, when I come across someone who, is coming to me about their business, but may have a deeper concern, my first thing is to say, I would suggest therapy. It's the first thing that I say. I would actually suggest therapy before you start paying me to coach you through your business. Because you can't be successful in your business without first being successful in your personal life and increasing your personal development, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
With that being said, and I know that was a lot to digest there. Usually is. But what are 3 tips you recommend to help some of the women, Muslimas or not, that are feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
Well, when I've had the opportunity to work with Muslim women or Muslim families in general, the first thing that's important for me as a therapist is really to understand, where they are in the religion and how it plays in their understanding of healing. Because everybody is in very different places around that. And when, I was trained many, many years ago to become a therapist, we were always taught to meet people where they are. So, I mentioned earlier that, you can't say to someone, go pray, go make dua. You can't say those things if that's the person that's struggling with their faith. You can't present them with those options because those options might literally push them away from treatment. So me gathering an understanding as to where they are and how much they would like to incorporate the religion into treatment is one of the first things that I try to identify. Another thing that I look to is to have them identify what it is that they want to be able to do, be able to gain, to do differently at the end of the process. I always explain to people, okay, you coming in and making a decision to come into treatment is your point A. Where is it that you want to be by the end of this process? Some people, in terms of therapy, they have different styles. They want to delve into the history. They want to understand the psyche. I take an eclectic approach and kind of meet people where they are, but do the things that they find beneficial. And some people don't want to kind of talk about the childhood. They don't want to understand, where it came from. They're more concerned about how do I get out of this? How do I change that? And so understanding where you want to go and the point B is really critical because that's going to drive everything that I do in terms of recommendations, how I'm going to guide sessions. That point B is your end goal. And I would say the other thing that I always want to know is what are people unwilling to do, or what are they unwilling to consider? And like I'll give the best example of that is when people say, well, I don't want to try or consider medication, which is completely fine. because, I'm not a proponent of people utilizing medication, under all circumstances. But I'll be very frank for you, for some people, it is literally a lifesaver. But if you tell me off the bat that that's not something that you want to consider, and you want to, try holistic treatments, or just prefer to use talk therapy, then that's what I'm going to do. For me, it's about making sure that I'm supporting you in the best way possible, but within the context of the things that you feel comfort around. There are some occasions where, we may begin again at the point A, and through our process, realize that we may need to consider other things that weren't necessarily on the table in the beginning. I have a responsibility, to revisit those things if I feel that people are really struggling and some of the techniques and things that they wanted to use are not working to the best of their abilities. But those are things that I feel like are very important. But for Muslims in general, understanding where they are in a religion is really an important one for me.
I really love everything that you're saying, and I really love that that's the approach that you take, not only with, Muslims, but just with people in general. I feel like, a lot of times we're in this like microwave generation, and we're also like in this cookie cutter, like, type thing where, like, this one phone will help everybody, or this one technique will help everyone. And that is so not so. In my business, I have particular programs that I help my clients with, but we may have to alter those programs. I may give someone more of one thing versus, something else, just because that's what they themselves and their business needs. So I love that you take that holistic and like eclectic approach. And I was one of those people. That the whole reason why I didn't want to go to therapy is because I didn't want them to prescribe me with any medication. I did not want to be on any type of medication. I'm like, I drink coffee every now and then, but I'm a tea drinker. Like, I strongly believe in, you can find a tea or you can find a herb to cure a headache, to all of those things. I don't even like taking aspirin. Like, I take an aspirin if I'm out and about and there's no tea. Like, so, I love that that's your approach to it. So, how important do you think emotional healing is? So you kind of touched on it a little bit, where they don't want to go back to their childhood. And, maybe some of the trauma, maybe some of the trauma that people have experienced doesn't stem from their childhood. It could stem from their adulthood. I don't know. But, how important is that emotional healing piece to self-care and just to being able to move forward?
I think that's a complicated and very loaded question. I'm going to do my best and give you my point of view, because, hearing you say that, the first thing that popped into my head is there ever absolute emotional healing? Because that would, in my opinion, mean that we've gotten over each and everything that may have had an impact on us in some way, shape, or form. And I don't believe in any human being being able to achieve perfection, because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. So when I hear that, it makes me feel that, is emotional healing, true healing, possible? I think for people, it's an evolving process, and it has to do with, how much people are invested in wanting to kind of move beyond, whatever challenges that they have been presented with in their life. I'll be 50 years old next year, and I'm still learning and evolving and still healing about many things.
Me too. Me too.
So I think that, you can strive for it, but there are some things that, may still stay with people. But as long as you, are working towards trying to be better and to learn from the mistakes that, have occurred and grow from those experiences, that is as much as we are able to do as human beings. So yeah, those are my thoughts about emotional. Is it something you should strive for? Absolutely. Because those things get in the way of our progress and our ability to be our very best selves, as you would say, living in HD. But for most people, some people don't even identify that there are things getting in their way. They're just kind of repeating the same patterns over and over and over and over again, not even realizing that those things are problems. So there has to be, I guess, an understanding and willingness on the part of the individual to even identify in the first place that there's something getting in the way. People wonder and will ask me very often, well, how do you know something is so bad that you need to go into therapy? Like, what's that benchmark? And I think depending upon who you ask, they're going to give you a different answer. But my answer to that is when it begins to have an impact on you in one of the domains of your life, meaning your family, your job, your interactions with others, and you're noticing that it's starting to affect you in a negative way, and that's no longer ideal for you, that be the benchmark to say, well, maybe I should consider counseling. Because people, in terms of their tolerance level, looks very different. Some people have a very high tolerance for being able to deal with difficulties or anxieties or depression. And some people cannot, so that really has to be something that the person individually kind of assesses for themselves. But if you're finding that, it's really starting to take a toll and have a negative impact in some way, and it's not satisfying to you, that be, I guess, the impetus for people to say, maybe I should consider counseling. But yes, we all need to be healing emotionally. But I think we're all works in progress.
I love that you say that. I actually said this to myself, I think it was last night, that I'm a lifelong learner, and that basically ties into that too, where, I'm a lifelong learner of myself, that, I want to, my goal in this life is to do my best to master myself, and that I'm able to, just be the best version of myself. And that's the whole reason why I created BUNHD, is because, I wanted to be able to give other women permission, open up a door to give them permission to be their absolute best selves. And I always knew that it was going to take a lot of work. The same way, I wore a mask, the same way that, I kind of stuffed things down, and I was this superwoman at my job. And I was just this amazing woman that nothing could penetrate her, and she was just in this relentless pursuit of things. But I was living unfulfilled, and I wasn't totally myself. That when people saw me on 120, 100%, 120%, I was only being 50% of who Halima could be. And I even tell people now, people that I coach, this is 60% of me. What you're getting from me is still 60%. And 60% may get someone else to their 100. But, imagine when I get to 70, when I get to 80, when I get to 90 and 100% of myself, if I reach that, I don't know, but that's definitely the goal. And I like that you said that each person's tolerance level is different. I would have to tell you that, mine was over 20 years in the making for me to come to the point where it came to a head, and I was just like, I can't take anymore. And the first thing that I did was admit it. I admitted it to myself. Hey, Halima, you don't have it all under control. You need to talk to someone. And it was just being cognizant of it, admitting to the defect or the flaw. And I think that that's what a lot of us have issues with. A lot of us have issues with admitting to the defect or the flaw, because then it means that we're not this perfect, everything under control. I tell this story to people, like my house, you could eat off the floor. And you would never know that I had a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old, whatever ages my children were. You never knew that I had these little small children in the home, because my home was immaculate. If you dropped your scrumptious piece of cake on the floor, you picked it up and ate it because that's how clean it was. And,
Mm-hmm.
that was my way of, controlling my environment. That was my way of, making sure that everything was just perfect. And I remember probably like maybe 2 years ago, me and my kids, we were like sitting watching a movie, and always when we watched a movie when they were growing up younger, I would always like, okay, we have to clean up, we got to fix, the covers. Like we're in like the family room, like watching a movie. Why are you cleaning up, lady? But my kids became so programmed. They would just get up. All I would say was I would go, all right. And they would just get up. It was like robotic. And they would just fix their covers and they would sit back down. All right, press play. And I remember looking back on that and going, OMG. And then this particular day, 2 years ago, we were in the family room and we were watching a movie. And I never asked them once to get up and like fix the covers or anything like that. So that's just progress for me. That's just me saying that it doesn't have to be perfect all the time for the moment to be perfect. And that's the place where I am right now. That's the whole BUNHD of it all is I am perfectly imperfect. And it is in that I'll be able to help more people and that I'll be able to help myself, essentially. It's just being okay with the flaws. So I totally appreciate you for, giving us that insight. And so I want to ask you, what does it mean for you, coming from the background that you come from? What does it mean to be you in HD, to be you in high definition?
Another loaded question. I feel like, because HD is high definition, and I would say my personality is for one that has a preference to kind of be behind the scenes. I'm not someone that has to be in the spotlight or have my name in lights. I prefer to, to be the worker bee and just kind of work behind the scenes and to do it unnoticed. So when you say HD, it's almost an oxymoron to me of sorts. But if I had to describe who Nadine is in HD, it would be being honest, because that is something that is really important to me and that I've really had to grow into. It's about understanding my faults, not being self-defeatist when I make mistakes, and not being hard on myself, and being grateful for the trials that I've had, and definitely for the blessings, because ultimately it brought me to the point of where I am today, which I feel like is a good place. Again, I do not think I'm at 100%. I am still trying to get as close as possible. But that's who Nadine is in HD. She's the girl that loves fashion. For those who know me, know that that's a
you
big
got.
piece.
Listen,
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you guys can't see her. But let me tell you, it's from the head, from the hijab to the shoes. Okay, it goes from the top all the way to the bottom. Okay, put together.
That's if anything, I would say that's the HD part that actually shows. But
yes.
Other than that, I try to still not really be that much seen, but that's Nadine HD. Honesty, the fashion and the love for family. That's me in HD.
I love it. And, one of the premises of, this podcast is encompassing is that being a boss Muslimapreneur, just being this dynamic, amazing, bold, beautiful woman is that it's all encompassing. It encompasses your family. It encompasses your love for yourself, your love for people. It encompasses your business. And we are all of those things. And we can't be our complete selves without all of those things. And so we have to take care of that. And we have to nurture ourselves. And so I'm going to take us out. I think, that this was an amazing, amazing, amazing look into mental health and the need for therapy. And I'm so appreciative of you, Nadine, taking time out of your day to just give us some insight and to, I would say inspire us to seek out help and not necessarily look at it as a bad thing. So this has been another.
It's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing
at all. This has been another spectacular episode of Maintain Your Islamic Identity and Still Be a Boss Muslimapreneur. It is our hope here at BUNHD that after each podcast, you will be empowered to have a deeper connection in your spirituality, personal, and business relationships. As women of faith, we have a responsibility to learn our religion, apply it to our daily lives, and to make a positive contribution in our local and global community. My inspirational quote of the week is by Jack Canfield. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. Peace and blessings be upon you. I'll talk to you soon.